Episode 49. When Atticus turned away from Mayella, he looked like his stomach hurt. But Mayella's face was a mixture of terror and fury. Atticus sat down wearily and polished his glasses with his handkerchief. Suddenly, Mayella became articulate. "I got something to say," she said. Atticus raised his head. "Do you want to tell us what happened?" But she did not hear the compassion in his invitation. "I got something to say, and then I ain't gonna say no more. That nigger yonder took advantage of me, and if you fine fancy gentlemen don't want to do nothing about it, then you're all yellow stinking cowards. Stinking cowards, the lot of you. Your fancy airs don't come to nothing. Your Mammon and Miss Mayeller don't come to nothing, Mr. Finch." Then she burst into real tears. Her shoulders shook with angry sobs. She was as good as her word. She answered no more questions, even when Mr. Gilmer tried to get her back on the track. I guess if she hadn't been so poor and ignorant, Judge Taylor would have put her under the jail for the contempt she had shown everybody in the courtroom. Somehow Atticus had hit her hard in a way that was not clear to me, but it gave him no pleasure to do so. He sat with his head down, and I never saw anybody glare at anyone with the hatred Mayella showed when she left the stand and walked by Atticus's table. When Mr. Gilmore told Judge Taylor that the state rested, Judge Taylor said, "It's time we all did. We'll take 10 minutes. Atticus and Mr. Gilmer met in front of the bench and whispered. Then they left the courtroom by a door behind the witness stand, which was a signal for us all to stretch. I discovered that I had been sitting on the edge of the long bench, and I was somewhat numb. Jem got up and yawned, Dill did likewise, and Reverend Sykes wiped his face on his hat. The temperature was an easy 90, he said. Mr. Braxton Underwood, who had been sitting quietly in a chair reserved for the press, soaking up testimony with his sponge of a brain, allowed his bitter eyes to rove over the colored balcony, and they met mine. He gave a snort and looked away. "Jim," I said, "Mr. Underwood's seen us." "That's okay. He won't tell Atticus. He'll just put it on the social side of the Tribune." Jem turned back to Dill, explaining, I suppose, the finer points of the trial to him, but I wondered what they were. There had been no lengthy debates between Atticus and Mr. Gilmer on any points. Mr. Gilmer seemed to be prosecuting almost reluctantly. Witnesses had been led by the nose, as asses are, with few objections. But Atticus had once told us that in Judge Taylor's court, any lawyer who was a strict constructionist on evidence usually wound up receiving strict instructions from the bench. He distilled this for me to mean that Judge Taylor might look lazy and operate in his sleep, but he was seldom reversed, and that was the proof of the pudding. Atticus said he was a good judge. Presently, Judge Taylor returned and climbed into his swivel chair. He took a cigar from his vest pocket and examined it thoughtfully. I punched Dill. Having passed the judge's inspection, the cigar suffered a vicious bite. "We come down sometimes to watch him," I explained. "It's going to take the rest of the afternoon now. You watch." Unaware of public scrutiny from above, Judge Taylor disposed of the severed end by propelling it expertly to his lips and saying, "Phew!" He hit a spittoon so squarely we could hear it slosh. "Bet he was hell with a spitball," murmured Dill. As a rule, a recess meant a general exodus, but today people weren't moving. Even the idlers who had failed to shame younger men from their seats had remained standing along the walls. I guess Mr. Heck Tate had reserved the county toilet for court officials. Atticus and Mr. Gilmer returned, and Judge Taylor looked at his watch. "It's getting on to 4, he said, which was intriguing, as the courthouse clock must have struck the hour at least twice. I had not heard or felt its vibrations. "Shall we try to wind up this afternoon?" asked Judge Taylor. "How about it, Atticus?" "I think we can," said Atticus. "How many witnesses you got?" "1. "Well, call him." Chapter 19. Thomas Robinson reached around, ran his fingers under his left arm, and lifted it. He guided his arm to the Bible, and his rubber-like left hand sought contact with the black binding. As he raised his right hand, the useless one slipped off the Bible and hit the clerk's table. He was trying again when Judge Taylor growled, "That'll do, Tom." Tom took the oath and stepped into the witness chair. Atticus very quickly induced him to tell us Tom was 25 years of age. He was married with 3 children. He had been in trouble with the law before. He had once received 30 days for disorderly conduct. "It must have been disorderly," said Atticus. "What did it consist of?" "Got in a fight with another man. He tried to cut me." "Did he succeed?" "Yes, sir, a little. Not enough to hurt. You see, Tom moved his left shoulder. "Yes," said Atticus. "You were both convicted?" "Yes, sir. I had to serve 'cause I couldn't pay the fine. Other fellow paid his'n." Dill leaned across me and asked Jem what Atticus was doing. Jem said Atticus was showing the jury that Tom had nothing to hide. "Were you acquainted with Miss Mayella Violet Ewell?" asked Atticus. "Yes, sir. I had to pass her place going to and from the field every day." "Whose field?" "I picks for Mr. Link D's." "You were picking cotton in November?" "No, sir. I works in his yard fall and winter time. I works pretty steady for him all year round. He's got a lot of pecan trees and things." "You say you had to pass the Ewell place to get to and from work. Is there any other way to go?" "No, sir, none as I know of." "Tom, did she ever speak to you?" "Why, yes, sir. I tip my hat when I go by, and one day she asked me to come inside the fence and bust up a shiffer robe for her." "When did she ask you to chop up the shiffer robe?" "Mr. Finch, it was way last spring. I remember it because it was chopping time and I had my hoe with me. I said I didn't have nothing but this hoe, but she said she had a hatchet. She give me the hatchet and I broke up the shiffer robe. She said, 'I reckon I have to give you a nickel, won't I?' And I said, 'No, ma'am, there ain't no charge.' Then I went home, Mr. Finch. That was way last spring, way over a year ago." "Did you ever go on the place again?" "Yes, sir." "When?" "Oh, well, I went lots of times." Judge Taylor instinctively reached for his gavel, but let his hand fall. The murmur below us died without his help. "Under what circumstances?" "Please, sir?" "Why did you go inside the fence lots of times?" Tom Robinson's forehead relaxed. "Oh, she'd call me in, sir. Seemed like every time I passed by yonder she have some little something for me to do. Chopping kindling, toting water for her. She watered them red flowers every day." "Were you paid for your services?" "No, sir. Not after she offered me a nickel the first time. I was glad to do it. Mr. Ewell didn't seem to help her none, and neither did the chillun, and I knowed she didn't have no nickels to spare." "Where were the other children?" "Well, they was always around, all over the place. They'd watch me work, some of 'em would set in the window.